So the PG era is over, I suppose. I mean, it's not. But there's enough rumors out there to suggest WWE is about to move back to TV-14, even if it's just so wrestlers can start saying the S-word on TV. Let's not pretend they don't love it. Starting around 2008, it has been a long old time, and even if it does tick away for a few months longer, it's still good to see what some of the PG folk are doing today. I'm Simon Miller, this is What Culture. Please do subscribe, and get yourself ready for the 10 precise moments when WWE PG era careers ended. Number 10, Ryback. It really did feel like Ryback was destined for a main event spot at one point. He was jacked, which makes Vince McMahon happy, and was on an undefeated streak that was gathering steam. That's why when it did fall apart, it was all quite surprising. This didn't just fall by the wayside either, it exploded. Mr. Feed Me More took on Kalisto for the US title on the Payback 2016 kickoff show, and within 24 hours he had been sent home. As it turned out, the company and the man had fallen out over future contract benefits, and on the 8th of August, he was let go for good. Ever since, Ryback has insulted them as much as possible. Go and watch this match too and notice how the cameras cut away from the former Skip Sheffield quite quickly. Clearly there had been a butting of heads already and no one knew what he was going to do. And also, for the people that come to my wrestling matches and chant, "Why back?" Well done, that's very smart. Number 9, AJ Lee. Let's never forget that AJ Lee is an all-timer. She rarely had a bad match, had an awesome gimmick, and even when she was a GM of Raw, it was a barrel of laughs. I do think she knew what she was doing. Sadly though, it sounded like her last year with WWE was no fun at all. I'm sure it didn't help that everything between the promotion and husband CM Punk was getting worse and worse, and come 2015, Lee decided this was all too much, and she called it a day. Throw in that her neck was also not in good shape, it was probably the right call. The last time we saw her on WWE TV was laughing at Naomi, who was dancing and Paige just staring, because the trio had just defeated Natalya and the Bella Twins at the Raw after WrestleMania 31. That was a fun match too, so not the worst way to check out, and on the 3rd of April, she announced her retirement. The best news is AJ has smashed it after this and been very outspoken about the importance of mental health. Damn hero. Number 8, Vicky Guevara. Since 2007, Vicky Guevara has been pretty good at getting booed, mostly because she just screamed, "Excuse me," at the top of her lungs. It made you want to rip off your ears and post them to the other side of the world. She had been on TV before that, but it was here where she really came into her own, and amazingly, this lasted all the way through to 2014 when Vicky moved into a part-time role. This included a surprise entrance at the first ever Women's Raw Rumble in 2018, although she did have one last hurrah after that before signing with AEW. Brand new GM Paige asked a few of her predecessors to return to the show, meaning we had Teddy Long, John Laurinaitis, and Guerrero for a throwaway segment on the SmackDown 1000 special. If you're making notes, that was the 16th of October 2018. It does kind of feel like that will be that. Doesn't seem like there's a spot for her today. Number 7, Sin Cara. So this entry is about Sin Cara in general, not Mystico the performer. In case you don't know, Cara was played by multiple people, and all in all it was a big mess. Just ask Hunico who took over. The character did have some success when he formed with Kalisto to form the Lucha Dragons, but given how WWE treated tag teams, there was always going to be a ceiling. It's why when November 2019 rolled around and Sin was put in a match against Drew McIntyre, he got smashed. I mean, seriously. Funnily enough, it tied into rumors that Cara was a little bit done with WWE and wanted out, and the company was cool with that. He was given his walking papers on the 8th of December, just 1 month later. If you do want to go cringe today, watch the powerbomb Drew gives to him too. Flub me sideways. Number 6, Zack Ryder. Could we one day see Zack Ryder back on our WWE TV screens? I think so, you know. Feels like a situation which will work itself out. It's not like he didn't have something back in 2011 as chants rang around every arena, but because Ryder had gotten himself over and WWE didn't like that, it was quickly killed off. Zack got no proper push and was then back to where he was before. Still, you can't argue with the fact he was there for 15 years, which is an incredible stat, although this is summed up in the sense his last appearance was an 80-second loss to Bobby Lashley on the 9th of March 2020 episode of Raw. Because of course it was. A month after this, those infamous cuts came around in which Ryder was a part of, and as of today, he has not returned. Seriously though, why would he? Matt Cardona is just winning on the indie scene and in many ways is a bigger star than he ever has been. The cool part is that yes, Zack was basically in WWE for the entirety of the PG era, and what a fixture he was. He probably does want to forget about that time Kane pushed him off the entrance ramp in a wheelchair though. Number 5, Jack Swagger. Not everyone gets to go out on Raw or SmackDown, as Jack Swagger is about to prove. Despite being a former world champion, WWE felt like a squash against Simon Gotch on the 2nd of November 2016 episode of Main Event was enough for the American, and then he was gone. Well, okay. Swagger did wrestle on some live events up until March next year when he was let go, but in terms of what the general public was able to see on television, was this random clash. He would go to AEW as soon as that was up and running and was smacking people in the face for real, because between that he took up MMA. I suppose the dude has done alright. Number 4, CM Punk. I haven't talked about tale, but one with a few tidbits that have fallen by the wayside. After being chokeslammed through a table courtesy of Kane at the 2014 Royal Rumble, CM Punk arrived at Raw the next day and went and had a chat with Vince McMahon and Triple H. A combination of events had convinced Punk that it was time to go, and when his bosses disagreed, he packed his bag and he left. While we did see him as part of Fox's coverage of SmackDown, as he was a pundit on TV show Backstage, CM has never been back in a WWE ring, meaning this cell job after being held through some wood really is the end of his run. If you do watch this now, you can see he's not a happy man. Punk looks totally exhausted and fed up as officials checked him over at ringside. Hindsight, we probably should just have allowed him to have a break, because for my money, he ain't ever coming back. Number 3, Bray Wyatt. This one genuinely shocked me. I don't think anybody thought Bray Wyatt was going to leave the WWE, so when it was announced on the 31st of July 2021 that he was out the door, I was stunned. What the hell is going on? This was only a few months after The Fiend was finally able to get rid of the burns that Randy Orton had caused him. But let us not forget, the Viper beat Bray at WrestleMania 37 and his pal Alexa Bliss turned on him. This led Wyatt into telling us a fresh start was around the corner. Boy, did we misinterpret that. I thought he was going to come up with a new gimmick or something. The last thing he did in WWE was wave goodbye to fans after a Firefly Funhouse, which is also fitting, I suppose, and you'd have to imagine Wyndham Rotunda was a bit fed up ever since he lost his Universal title to Goldberg. Amazingly, he hasn't been seen in any wrestling promotion since, although that could change soon. Seems like WWE is back in the cards. What a world. Number 2, Daniel Bryan. Only Daniel Bryan would go out like this. The first 4 months of 2021 were just Bryan having banger after banger with everybody he possibly could, so much so, everyone agreed that he had to be in the WrestleMania main event. This was even better because he had already been beaten by Roman Reigns, and yet even then, we all knew it had to get to Roman versus Daniel versus Edge. He really did save his best for last though, because on the 30th of April SmackDown, Bryan put his career on the line against the Tribal Chief. It evolved into a 27-minute epic that was easily one of the best all year in WWE, and it even opened the door for Cesaro to have a quick main top of the card run too. Knowing he was leaving, Daniel was beaten up by the Usos as well, as the Swiss Superman was tied up in the ropes. So yeah, the last thing fans saw was the Yes Man face down on the floor, totally unconscious. He was out by the 4th of May, and he did think about returning to WWE, but then he went and signed for AEW instead. Number 1, Dean Ambrose. Dean Ambrose was done when his contract came to an end. He was sick of his terrible booking as a heel and being treated like the kooky guy when he wanted to, well, be Jon Moxley. I think we can all agree he was right. This is exactly what WWE should have let him do. Knowing that no amount of money was going to tempt Ambrose, the powers that be decided to try and draw some interest by reuniting the Shield, which is why we had their final chapter on the 21st of April 2019. It did see Dean, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins beating Baron Corbin, Bobby Lashley, and Drew McIntyre in the main event, and it was alright. Fun enough. There were some nice moments as Ambrose posed on the turnbuckles while looking at partner Renee Young, and they also embraced at ringside, and 10 days later, he was no longer legally bound to the company. We then got Double or Nothing 2019, and ever since, what a ride. Know of any other precise moments when WWE PG era careers ended? Make sure you let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Then head on to whatculture.com where you can read yourself some articles. Make sure you follow us on social media at Simon316 and What Culture WWE. And we do have a lot of other videos. I think you should watch one. My name is Simon from What Culture. Thank you very much for joining me as always. Why don't you get up and do a star jump? And if you did it, you made my day.